Now taking a look at our full forecast, starting off right now in Bakersfield, we're seeing 103 degrees. As you head down into the mountains, we're cooling off into the 80s, a little bit of the 90s, more of the 90s, and even up to 100 as you head towards Kernville and Lake Isabella. And as for the desert, we're seeing some of the 90s, but as you head up north, that's where we're seeing more of the hundreds. Now, tonight we're expecting to see between 60 to 70 degrees throughout the county, but tomorrow we do expect things to be slightly cooler than what we saw earlier today, up to 102 degrees in the desert and as low as 83 degrees in the mountains, with both the valley and Kern River Valley within the 90s range. And as you can see, we do have a heat advisory in effect, which you can see in this orangish color. This is expected to last until tomorrow at 6 a.m. And with that, we're seeing a 70 to 90% probability of reaching at least 100 degrees and a 15 to 30% probability of seeing more than 105 degrees. Now let's get a look at some of the windy conditions. We do see some gusts at the moment towards the Taft area, as well as some of the desert, relatively clear in some of the central areas. And as we head into tonight, we do see that starting to die down a bit, starting to condense more to some of these desert areas, now getting closer to the 20-mile-per-hour range. Relatively breezy throughout towards the Bakersfield area, a little bit of wind towards Taft and Buttonwillow. And as we head into the morning, we see things dying down even more with just a few patches of gusty conditions, and this still being towards some of the desert areas. Now as we head into the afternoon around this time tomorrow, that's when we do see things picking up to pretty similar conditions to what we're seeing right now. Some of the 20s up to the 30-mile-per-hour numbers towards California City. Relatively breezy as you head into the Bakersfield area, and as you head more east, that's when west, that's when we are expecting to see some stronger winds towards Buttonwillow and Taft. Now let's get a look at the week ahead of us. Starting off tomorrow in the valley, we have a high of 99 degrees and low of 69 degrees. We're starting off in the 70s, warming up into the 90s, and we're looking at clear skies throughout the day. Throughout the week, we're expecting to stay within the 90s, but as we head into Father's Day, cooling off to 91 degrees. Heading into next week, we are expecting things to cool down a little bit before picking up into the hundreds by Wednesday. As for the mountain communities, we're starting off in the 80s, cooling off into the 70s for Frazier Park and Tehachapi, back up to the 80s. Lake Isabella, we're starting off in the 90s, cooling into the 80s, and warming back up into the 90s by Wednesday.